Hey, good morning, guys. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Was able to enjoy the great weather that we had on Saturday. I know yesterday wasn't very nice, and today's kind of starting out looking the same as yesterday. But yeah, I hope you guys found something fun to do. We're continuing today with things that we kind of left off with last week, where we're still solving these trig equations, but now some of the problems might not give us special angles, and that's when we need to use our inverse on the calculator and find our reference angles, kind of like we were practicing last week, okay? Um, Look, I think everyone kind of had a good grasp on this because the Zoom session that I made available on Friday did not have any attendees. So I guess we're all pretty confident with what we're doing here, which is great. But in the future, it'd be nice if we can just kind of check in, stop in, and ask any questions or whatever. So if you want to write these problems down as I'm going over them, you would also need your calculator, but you'll see that on my screen as well. We'll kind of be going back and forth. So the first thing that we need to do is solve these equations, just like we have done in the past where we could be factoring or another type of method. But here we're pretty confident that we do have to factor, right? We have to make two parentheses. We're going to use factors of 18 and factors of 2 that can hopefully, when we multiply them and add them together, get 9, okay? So it's kind of guess and check, kind of think about it in your head, but the factors that are going to work here, factors of 18, it's going to be 6, sine x, and 3 sine x, and then factors of 2 will also go in the parentheses here. The 2 is going to have to go here. This is going to have to be a minus sign, and the 1 would go here. So this is just factoring, all right? This is going to guess and check where I got factors of 18, sure, 9 and 2 or 18 and 1, but the ones that are going to give us the negative 9 is going to be the 6 times the negative 2, the 1 times the positive 3, negative 12 plus 3. That's where we get that number there. So once we factor, we got to continue solving. So we would take each one of those factors, set them equal to 0, and we're going to get sine x to be negative 1/6. And we're going to get sine x to be 2/3. All right, once we get this, we know it's not a special angle, so now we're going to have to use the calculator. I'm going to need to get my reference angle here. And I'm going to get that reference angle by going over to the calculator, making sure I'm on radians, and doing sine. Remember, ignore the negative, sine 1/6. All right. Now, it was a negative 1/6, but that comes up in the next step when we ask ourselves, where is sine negative? And it's negative here and here. So the reference angle that we just found, we'll round to 3 decimals, was 0.167. Okay. However, that's not going to be my answer. I'm going to have to take, since I'm in quadrants 3 and 4, it's going to be pi plus 1/6 plus 0.167.
Okay.
And it's going to be 2 pi minus the same reference angle. All right. So there are my two answers. My answers would be 3.309 and 6.116. All right, guys, just for time's sake, and you see how I struggle with writing on the mouse here. Those are the two answers, okay? It's also breakfast time over here, so you might hear Olivia in the background. Okay, so like I was saying, I'll post the answer key as well, and that might kind of save me a little bit of writing and save us some time on the video. But that's how you would have to start the problem. Factor, find the reference angle, and not just for one of your answers, we'd have to do it again here. So back to the calculator, make sure you're always using inverse. You're ignoring the negative, though this one was positive anyway. Think about, well, where is y positive? It's positive in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. So in this case, 0.729, or we'll actually round that to 0.730, is actually one of our answers, in addition to the angle that would be in quadrant 2, which is pi minus 0.730. And there's that answer. So our answer for this problem is going to be the last four numbers here. Okay, all four of those angles would be our answer to number 1. All right, and number 2 here, we're going to take the same approach. We're going to have to factor. Now, 2 is a prime number, so that's going to make it pretty easy that the first value in my parentheses here are going to be 2 tan and over here we'll just have tangent x. All right, again, it equals 0 because we're solving here. We just got to factor first. Now, 15 isn't prime, but I got to think of factors of 15 that are going to satisfy this. And it's going to be 5 and 3. And this is just guess and check. You might have to write some of this down, go off to the side. But I know that 2 times 3 is 6, and that's going to have to be positive. And negative 5 times 1. And 6 minus 5, that'll give me the middle term here that we need. Once we factor correctly, we set our factors equal to 0. So I would add 5, I would divide by 2. And we're going to get 5 halves. And over here, we're just going to subtract 3. And get negative 3. All right. Now, once we get those answers, again, we realize that these aren't special angles. So once we realize it's not a special angle, we go to the calculator. And using inverse trig, we'll do 5 halves. And now tangent is positive in quadrant 1 and quadrant 3. So that reference angle is one of my answers, okay? In addition to the angle that would be in quadrant 3, which would be pi plus my reference angle. So pi plus 1.190. There's my 2 answers for 5 halves. Got to do it again. This time ignoring the negative, just type in inverse tangent of 3. All right. However, our reference angle is not going to be an answer here because tangent is not negative in the first quadrant. It's going to give us a negative outcome in quadrant 2 and quadrant 4. So back to the calculator. If I want to figure out what the angle is in quadrant 2, it's going to be pi minus my reference angle, which will be 1.249. And it's going to be 2 pi minus our reference angle. Okay, so for 5 halves, our answer was the first 2 here was 1.190 and 4.332. And then for the second piece here, these last 2 numbers, were your answers. 1.893 and 5.034. Okay. All right, continuing on. Okay, so here, how are we going to begin to solve? Well, we only have two terms. They both have a cosine. So again, we're going to have to factor out, in this case, factor out a GCF, which is cosine x. And what we would be left with would be a 6 cosine x, because that was squared. And then a placeholder here, minus 1. All right, equals 0. Take your factors, set them equal to 0. The cosine that we factored out gets us cosine x equals 0. And this parenthesis here, if I add 1 and divide by 6, would get us cosine x equals 1/6. All right, not every time are you going to get something where you have to use the calculator. Here, in this case, where does cosine equal 0? Well, x equals 0 in two spots, two special angles, up top and down here. So two of our answers are ones that we are familiar with, pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. Yeah, we don't know where x equals 1/6. So that's going to be where we have to use the calculator. Sorry, I hit the wrong button. Just ignore that. Try this again. There it is. Inverse cosine of 1/6. All right, now x is positive here, right? So we are in quadrant 1. Our reference angle will be an answer, as will the angle that's in quadrant 4. So this value of 1.403, as well as 2 pi minus our reference angle, they will both be our answers. Okay.
You're eating your waffle?
All right, the next problem, just two terms, sine x and sine. This one we should be pretty confident with. We're just going to take a sine out. Because sine is common in both terms. That would leave us with sine x minus 1. Set our factors equal to 0. And we got sine x equals 0 and sine equals 1. So again, ones that we should be comfortable with here. These are definitely special angles. No need to use the calculator. Where is y 0? Well, it's 0 in two spots. Where is y 1? Just right there. So our answers are 0, because again, we're not using 2 pi. We're just going to use 0 there. Pi and pi over 2. All right. So hopefully, you as you watch the video, you're actively taking notes, pause, go back, whatever you need to do. And then the worksheet that will follow today will look very similar to the problems that we're doing. All right. We're doing our fifth and last problem next. And you'll notice here, I did throw in secant, where we're just going to solve the problem just like we would if it's sine or cosine. But in the end, once we get our answers, we'll then just take the reciprocals and we'll work off those. All right, so 3 terms lead us to thinking, okay, 2 parentheses, we're going to have to factor. Leading coefficient's 1, so that makes it easier. Factors of 12 that give us 7. The signs will both be the same here. So factors of 12 that are going to give us 7 is going to be a -4 and a -3. And now if I take each one of these and set them equal to 0, I'm not going to get my answers, but I'm getting closer. So we get secant equals 4 and secant's going to equal 3. But again, we're not going to work with secant. We're not going to work with cosecant or cotangent. We're always going to take the reciprocals and work with sine, cosine, or tangent. So in this case, secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So 1/4 is going to be an angle that I have to figure out its reference angle of, or value I have to find. And then same with 1/3. All right, and since I have this page open right now and I'm writing, let's just think of, since they're both positive, our answers for both values, 1/4 and 1/3, will ultimately be in the first and the fourth quadrant, the 2 quadrants where x, or where cosine, is positive. All right, so we go to the calculator using inverse. 1/4, that's my answer in quadrant 1, and then 2 pi minus that reference angle, which if we round the 2 decimals, will make it 1.318. Bless you. And then over here, we'll do cosine of 1/3, which again is also an answer here because we're in quadrant 1. And then finally, our last answer, 2 pi minus that reference angle, which we'll say is 231 if we're rounding to 3 decimals. So there's that answer. Okay, so I know I didn't write down all the answers, guys, because it would have made the video even longer, but definitely go through. You'll see the answers either on the paper here or on the calculator. I'll post an answer key as well so you can reference, and you'll look for the assignment, today's worksheet. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions. Either shoot me an email or just kind of give the private message in Google Classroom, and we'll get those addressed. But thanks, guys. Have a good one.